listening to On the Way Home with your host, Michael Braithwaite.
Welcome, friends of On the Way Home podcast. My name is Michael Braithwaite, and I have the absolute pleasure of being the host of this wonderful podcast where we look at all the different challenges, all the different solutions, all the different people doing incredible work in this sector around housing, homelessness, health, poverty reduction, and so on. We've been doing this for 5 years now. We've had some incredible guests. We've had return guests like John Fox and Ricardo, and there's so many more. Keir McDonald and others who have come on to talk about the great work that they're doing. And today we're going to do something a little special. Before we get to why it's special, I want to talk a little bit about Blue Door. So Blue Door is my organization. We've been around for 42 years and primarily working in York region, which is just north of Toronto in the Greater Toronto area, and now do work in Durham region. As we record this, we're just opening in partnership with the region of Durham. We built this beautiful new transitional housing facility in Beaverton. 47 beds. It's gorgeous. This is the way you do dignified housing, my friends. And Blue Door has the honor of operating that. And so we're doing that, opening that up, and which is really cool and incredible. We do work with our construction social enterprise Construct, which has put 500 people. It's a pre-apprenticeship program that gets people ready for success to be apprentices in the trades where we desperately need them, where they make a living wage right out of the gate. So it's poverty reduction, it's homelessness prevention, they get healthcare benefits and so on. So it's really, really cool. We've done that with over 500 individuals with some crazy stories there, and much, much more, from emergency housing to transitional to housing for the queer community through our inclusion program, which is IN Inclusion program, which is the first of its kind north of the city of Toronto. So check us out at bluedoor.ca. I work with a team of 120 very talented people, much more talented than myself, who do the heavy lifting. And they do incredible work. So check us out there. And of course, look at past episodes of On the Way Home at onthewayhome.ca. If you want to see the videos, go to YouTube. Otherwise, anywhere you find podcasts, you can check out On the Way Home. We have such great guests week after week. And next week, I got to tell you, there's incredible guests you don't want to miss. My favorite, after doing about 250 episodes, this is my favorite coming up. So very cool. But today we're going to do something a little different. We thought, let's take some questions that we got beforehand from our audience, and I will attempt to kind of throw some light on them as the host of this program, where I've talked to a lot of people doing great work. So we've taken some questions from you. I'm going to answer those, and if you have other questions at all times, if you have ideas around hosts, or you have questions, or you think, like, I really like for you to tackle X, or we don't have a lot of information on this, or there's someone doing great work here, or is there, can you find it? Just reach out to me at michael.b@bluedoor.ca. Always looking for great ideas, great guests. If you are someone who wants to come on the show, you have something cool to share, something you've tackled, a journey you've gone through, please reach out as well to me at michael.b@bluedoor.ca. So let's get on with our questions. The first question we have from one of our guests is, what are the biggest barriers to solving homelessness in Canada? Um, right? Homelessness isn't a mystery. We know what to do. There's all sorts of amazing people doing great work. Piece to doing this is really investment, funding dollars, right? Canada needs 5 million homes built by 2030. Most likely, we're not going to hit that goal. But when we stopped investing in social housing, late 80s, early 90s, for many, many years, there's a huge gap there, right? So we have many, many homes to build. We don't have the funds or the investment to do so. We have to get everyone on board, right? From the private sector to nonprofit builders. We have to be creative. We have to have different partnerships. So, investment is the biggest piece. That also means housing. That's the biggest gap to doing that. And it's also getting people to understand. I mean, recently in Ontario, we've had a bunch of mayors who are urging the Premier of Ontario to use the non-withstanding clause to give them kind of so they can override someone's human rights or the charter's rights to stay in an encampment if suitable housing isn't found. And one mayor said to move them along, right? But where are they moving them along to? And that's part of the problem too. There's just not enough options, right? The challenge of homelessness, the numbers have increased, unfortunately, over time, and we don't have enough long-term dignified solutions to doing that. So it's a lot of policy. Homelessness really is the creation of bad policy decisions. It's going to take a lot of good policy decisions to turn that corner. And it's going to take time, folks. This is not an overnight thing. There are some big things we could do, but those take time. Building housing from the start of we're going to build something to its complete, right? Take 5 to 10 years. And we're, challenging those processes to try and speed up those builds, et cetera. The definition of affordability, what exactly affordable to who, right? That kind of thing. So really, there are some big barriers there, but one is just investment in the sector. We have to have investment from all levels of government and investment for community itself. All right, let's go to another question here. How is the current economic climate, including inflation and housing market trends, affected homelessness in Canada? Well, it's kind of when things are tough for all, they're always tougher on our most vulnerable, right? So when the cost of ownership goes up and that pushes more people into rental, and that gets our rental market more competitive, and those people who are just hanging on are able to pay maybe the rents that are out there. When those rents increase, that pushes them further back to not be able to afford rents into homelessness. So you have new people experiencing homelessness, right? And affordability, of course, has or the lack of affordable housing has grown over the last 5 years through the pandemic, through interest rates rising, and it will take a long time to climb back. With that, with rents, the average rent I think for a one-bedroom apartment in the GTA is $2,000 a month. You have to have usually a household income of $100,000 a year. The living wage is far below that. Many people who receive social assistance throughout Canada, I mean, it's nowhere near the amount you need to cover housing. So there's some big gaps there, right? But yeah, the current climate has been even harder on our most vulnerable, pushing our numbers. People experiencing homelessness to skyrocketing new highs moving forward. Is always harder on our most vulnerable as it affects us all. Here's a question here. Can you share? We talk a lot about challenges. So this is, can you share a recent success story from Blue that highlights the impact of your programs? I'll share one from Construct. What I love about our construction social enterprise Construct is it really is a poverty reduction, homelessness prevention program. Because if you're experiencing homelessness when you come into the program, it's going to be short-lived. If you're on the brink of experiencing homelessness, hopefully it won't happen. And really, the short answer to that is because when you become an apprentice, depending on which trade you choose, you're going to make a living wage right out of the gate, where you can afford market rental, where you'll have health benefits, where you'll be healthier, and it's really meaningful work as well, right? So I'm really proud of that program. And we had a couple first. The female from the couple went through the program, loved it. They had a young child. They were both really struggling. The program now supports around her, around childcare supports, rent supports. We do transportation supports. And she was so happy with it. And she was doing so well. Her husband said, I'm going to enter the program too. They're both through it. They're both working as apprentices at different parts of the trades. It's really helped their family. They have benefits. They have meaning. They have care for their child. And so we've just seen them thrive as a couple coming through. But that program, I mean, it serves new Canadians. It serves women fleeing violence. It serves youth, and it serves people experiencing homelessness, right? And it really breaks that cycle. It's a very, very cool and effective program. How does Blue Door engage with the government or other policymakers to advocate for change? Well, I think, Blue Door, like many nonprofits and charities around Canada, we know that government plays a large part in preventing ending homelessness and creating affordable housing, right? So we're always having conversations with our government partners. And I mean, the trick is for most people is that we're not talking about one conversation. You're talking about multiple conversations with all levels of government, with because they all have different levers they can pull. With members from different parties, we are nonpartisan. So whoever is in power, that's who we're going to work with to get housing built. That's how it works. But you're also working with opposition parties, right, to find out their mandates to help push mandates and policy changes and those types of things through. So you kind of have your key focuses on, for us right now, it's around raising dollars to build some deeply affordable housing, to seed our land trust, housing for all that keeps housing affordable in perpetuity, and grows the stock of affordable housing. It's around the expansion of our construct program, so other nonprofits can actually take the program, run with it, get more people into the trades, lift more people out of poverty, and stop them from experiencing homelessness, that kind of thing. But you're always, it's a consistent effort with multiple conversations, right? Sometimes it's about timing. When budgets are released, or when opportunity presents itself, I think as a nonprofit, you always have to have a bunch of ideas kind of in the hopper, that when the opportunity presents itself, you're ready to launch forward, and you take advantage of those opportunities when they present. So you're always working government relations with all levels of government at all times, right? To really keep that relationship going. So sometimes even at the government level, where they might reach out and say, "Hey, remember that thing you mentioned," or "How quickly," or "How." So you want to keep that ever evolving, for sure. And I'd encourage people. I mean, I think Blue Door, we didn't have the capacity to hire. We're mid-sized organization. We did not hire within. We actually went out and hired external government relations consultant. And we're thrilled with Jacob Gorenkoff and his team at Homeward. They've done great work, right? This is what they do day in, day out. It's actually more affordable than hiring our own. And we've had great progress with Jacob and the team, setting meetings up for us, reaching out to the right people, listening to us, to like what's important, what impact we want to communicate, that kind of thing. So I encourage others, like, to encourage your boards, make the investment in government relations, a GR person or a government relations consultant. It matters, and it drives in funding, and it keeps you relevant, keeps you top of mind, for sure. How can local communities best support the mission of Blue Door and other charities? Well, I think, quite often we, all of us, are guilty of pointing the finger at government and pushing government, and don't stop that, right? That's, government plays a huge part, but so does community. People say, well, what can I do? Like, how am I a part of preventing ending homelessness, creating affordable housing? Well, number one, what groups like CAEH and CHRA have done is really push the sector and push Canadians to make housing top of mind. And it is now, like any election, whether it's local, provincial, federal, people are talking about housing and affordable housing, right? So that, use that vote, of course, get people out to vote, to change policy. Better policy will help us all. The other thing too is what programs are you running where you could get community involved in? Blue Door runs a Mosaic Interfaith Out of the Cold program, where the faith community opens its doors, and through staffing and volunteer models, with the community helping out, we're able to help people get a warm place to sleep at night, feed them, make them feel some love and compassion from their community. And sometimes that's, that is the game changer. It's just, yes, the housing, of course, and the food and everything, but knowing that your community cares about you and that gives you hope, and hope can be everything, right? So that's the way we kind of involve people in our faith community and others to get involved in that. And they see that they have people from all walks of life coming through that program, and it really might change their mindset, get them fired up, and again, build your support in the community. What innovations or new approaches is Blue Door exploring to better support people facing homelessness? I think you always have to be innovative and think differently. What we're doing is good, but the job is far from done. In fact, I mean, these are the most challenging times ever for people experiencing homelessness or lack of adequate housing. And so we have built Housing for All Land Trust, which looks to, one of the problems is we're losing affordable housing faster than we're building at a much faster rate. So how do we keep what we have affordable, so we don't lose more to the private sector, crumbling infrastructure. How do we keep land? That is, of course, land, there's not more land around, but we try and keep the land that we have or access the land. And housing land trust is a way to do that, right? We go out and we work with our municipal partners, our federal and provincial partners, groups like the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority and others in Parks Canada. And we look at land and housing and vacant housing that's available. Developers who might have remnants of land or a house they don't know what to do with on a property, and we bring that together, and then you have a portfolio of land and houses, and you try and leverage that to create more and more housing, maybe develop housing on some of that land. So a land trust is a great way to do that because it remains affordable in perpetuity. So Blue Door is pushing for that. We saw the success with our construction social enterprise program, and we are looking to expand that across Canada. And that's not Empire Building, it's not Blue Door that's going to run it. We can go to a group. We have a group perhaps in Niagara that is looking at, is set up well to run Construct. It will be Construct by that organization, but we give them all the kind of primary pieces to get off to a good impact, right? It's measurable and larger to do that. So a little different, I think, as we push forward. We're always thinking, how can we tweak and do things different? What partners can we bring in that will help us become more successful too? We incorporate healthcare into what we do now too with our housing programs. We saw that during COVID when people had access to a nurse right off the bat, because that's what was part of our isolation program, that they would thrive, right? So we've done that. We've raised funds to bring in a part-time nurse, and we actually measure the impact of that. The number of calls we're making to EMS were cut in half just with a part-time nurse and a doctor coming in every 2 weeks, who have been incredible. We now have a full-time nurse and that doctor as well. We have two individuals who are in-reach workers who work in one of the local hospitals. So people aren't discharged into homelessness. They're actually linked up with services that can support them moving forward. And that's had huge impact too. So it's a different approach. And we want to increase that to have these in-reach workers in every hospital in York Region and beyond. Here's a question here. It says, what inspired you to work in the nonprofit sector, specifically focusing on homelessness and housing? Well, I'll tell you a few things too. Social sector itself, I was voluntold when I was 13. I wasn't going to sit around the house by my mom. You're going to go volunteer at the Y. And I couldn't believe she'd expect me to do something for free. Best thing I ever did, right? Loved it. Tons of leadership lessons there. Worked at the Y for 23 years. Housing, my last stop at the Y, we had a men's residence that was just independent living. But because it was so affordable and it was set up like a dorm, it was the cheapest independent living in Hamilton, right? So we had a lot of challenges with addictions and mental health with 174 men living there with no services attached because it wasn't a housing program. It was simply just housing without supports. And I saw how that didn't work and how you need supports. And I think who really inspired me to go into this is my partner, Sylvia Braithwaite, who works at Fred Victor. And she was in this, she started in 2008, and watching the work she was doing, for me, feeling that you're really having impact, something you could get behind, be passionate about. I have a sister who has been in precarious housing, homelessness for a number of years, and still has a lot of challenges with mental health and addictions. So it's very personal to me, something I could get behind and understand. I think of if we had done a lot of preventative work with my sister, where would she be now, moving forward? So that kind of inspired me to get involved, and I loved it. I mean, the people that I get to work with and the team and the stories I hear and understanding that homelessness is not something that happens to someone else. It's all around us, and that it's a very human problem, that these individuals are friends, our brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandfathers, grandmothers, and they behind this work day in and day out. What are my long-term goals or visions for addressing homelessness in Canada over the next 5 to 10 years? Listen, the nonprofit sector really needs to step up and be a leader in developing and building housing. And we need to get the tools to do that. We've had incredible groups across Canada demonstrate that. There's Wood Green, and many others that have done this. Fred Victor and others have developed this housing. BC Housing has done some incredible work as well. We have to do more of that, right? We have to. So for us at Blue Door, it really is to look at those opportunities to leverage what housing we have to build more housing, develop more housing, find land, work with good partners, be innovative and different, take advantage of government programs to scale up and build thousands of units of deeply affordable housing in mixed communities. We have examples of beautiful, revitalized mixed communities like Regent Park and others that have thrived. So let's continue to do that. And that's my goal, is to really be ambitious and drive the building of affordable housing over the next 5 to 10 years so we can help so many in need. All right, let's see. What do we have here? What do you find most rewarding about leading an organization in this field? It's working with the people that I get to work with. I mean, people are drawn to this because we have a shared set of values, and value-driven people are incredible and inspiring and awesome to work with. I mean, the pandemic could have ground us, all down and burnt everyone out. But these are warriors who, we supported, and they work through it, and they thrive because they have the passion and they wear their hearts on their sleeves. These are everyday heroes, right? So that inspires me. That's the most rewarding thing for me, is working with amazing people and doing cool things to help people experiencing homelessness, right? To give people hope moving forward. Can you share some of the upcoming events and projects going on Blue Door? Yeah, sure. One of the cool things for years, even when I was not at Blue Door, we had this little, Blue Door has this little house, Kevin's place. It served us well, big piece of land. And on my big mouth, when I was at 360 Kids years ago, I used to say, why would they just keep that big house? Why wouldn't they knock that down and build more affordable housing? So when I actually was in the seat at Blue Door, it was put up or shut up. So I'm pleased to say in the next month, that house will come down. We'll have 14 stacked townhomes going up there, all deeply affordable, 30% of someone's income. People coming off the waiting list for York Region, people from our by names list, still running some emergency housing there as we do in the current house. Very cool. All sorts of different levels of government coming together to make this happen. So that's pretty cool. We're working on something else, hopefully, in York Region to develop a lot of housing. We have the Land Trust coming up, the expansion of Construct. Moving forward, we're just opening Beaverton and Durham region. We hope to do a lot more work with Durham. Durham has an amazing team and council. Stella, who's the commissioner there, and her team. I mean, Beaverton's gorgeous. They've done so much work over the past 5 years, and they want to do more. We want to work with them to make that so. I think that's some of the innovative stuff we're doing, is to really drive that. What specific programs does Blue Door currently offer, and how do they directly address housing instability in York Region? We run a lot of programs. I'm going to talk about a couple that I'm really proud of. I'm proud of them all, but even more so our inclusion program. We had not one, but two different research studies that showed we were not meeting the needs of 2S LGBTQ plus youth. And rather than let them sit on the shelf without any funding, we said, we got to do this. We built a program. It's semi-independent living with supports. We now own a house. We call it inclusion. There's 5 bedrooms there. And really we used Lou Odette, when the Odette Foundation was up and doing that work, was the first in. He's an incredible individual who foundation helped us with that. The North Pine Foundation and Cheyenne Ratnam, who really stepped up to help us out and buy the house. That program is so cool and is addressing the needs and proving that this independent model can work. And we hope to expand that. So that's pretty cool. We have a new program too. We ask ourselves some tough questions sometimes. We ask, is it possible to pay deeply affordable rent, but also kind of build some equity or build some hope for the future? So we have a program that we're going to do that where people will pay 30% of whatever their income is, but also over 5 years, build up a little equity, a little nest egg, so they leave with some money in the bank, with some hope moving forward, right? So that's a cool program that we're going to try and integrate in some of the work that we're doing in the future. and much, much more. I mean, we continue to run emergency housing. We run a we run a transitional program, Passage House, a partnership with Region Families. We do emergency housing for families. That's expanded through a couple different programs, and the in-reach work, the health work, and we keep growing. Right, Construct is in Peel with Humber College and in Durham with Durham College. And we have our partners at Leuna that are incredible, Leuna 506, and our partners at the Home Depot Canada Foundation that support not just Construct, but they series of trades-like programs for youth across the country, which is called TradeWorks. So we want to expand that. So lots of work to be done. Last question here. It says, what are some misconceptions about homelessness and how does Blue Door work to challenge these? Well, just when I think we're making a lot of progress, sometimes I'll hear things from important decision makers. Our premier recently said, people need to get off their ASS and get a job, right? And that's a common refrain is if you just get a job, everything will be okay. For so many people experiencing homelessness, the reasons behind it and the traumas behind it. It's really hard to look for a job when you don't have access to food, access to showers and toilets, and access to a place where you can actually get decent sleep and tend to your health. So it's not as easy as just getting a job. It's also easy not to hold a job when you don't have a home to go to rest up and do that. And when you haven't addressed the trauma and different pieces around why you're experiencing homelessness in the first place. I think sometimes you hear, well, it's a choice. People are in encampments. It's a choice. They were offered a shelter bed. But we don't know. I mean, it's not just, hey, if someone came to you and said, you don't have housing, but I'm going to offer you this one choice. And maybe when you went to that shelter bed before, maybe you were hurt or maybe someone threatened you or something happened that makes you nervous or scared and you don't feel safe there, despite the best efforts of the team, right? So we have to have a variety of different housing supports, right? Not the same thing for everyone because people need different supports. Youth need different supports than seniors, than newcomers, et cetera, who are navigating the system. So we need to, understand that as well. And when I say people experiencing homelessness, you want to see the person and that's their experience. But it's we lose that human part of things when we see people. Those are humans, right? And it's about dignity. I often say, too often, right? People are probably tired of me saying it. So we have to get beyond good enough. We think people are like, here's a better sleeping bag, a better tent, a better bench. And it's not about that. It's about a key to your front door. It's about dignified housing. If you always that benchmark of what would be good enough for your mother, father, brother, sister, your kids. That's the answer. And that's dignified housing working forward. And everyone, it's not done. And investments are ongoing. Like it's expensive, but you can't, it's not, one and done. You made the investment, you walk away. It's consistent investment in housing. And that's why countries like Finland are doing really well in the housing portfolios because over the last 20 plus years, they've consistently invested in many forms and pieces around housing and supports, right? And I think the other thing too is it's not just about housing, it's also about incomes too. People had higher incomes and that's like the big, what they call it, the big experiment with CERB, right? Where people were getting $2,000 a month. Food bank usage was much lower. People were able to housing. They had an adequate income, right? If you in Neil Hetherington, I talk about it all the time, says more food is not the answer. If people actually could pay for their housing, if housing was affordable, they'd have money to pay for food, right? With 1 in 10 going to the food bank now, it's about affordability and incomes as well, where, we look at someone receiving social assistance in Ontario, like a total of $700 of shelter and food allowance. And when your one bedroom's at $2,000, there's a $1,300 gap, not taking into consideration transportation, food, necessities of life, right? Or just even a little bit of entertainment. The gap is huge, right? So we have to narrow that gap. It is really around income support. So it's not just about people aren't lazy and it's not a choice. When that kid's sleeping in class, it's probably because they've been walking around all night because they're scared at night to sleep. So they sleep where they finally feel safe, and that might be in class. So it's kind of taking our judgments back, right? And really giving it some thought. All of these were wonderful, wonderful questions. Listen, I could babble on forever, but I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you writing in and giving these questions. Next week, we're going to have incredible guests. And every week, we have some amazing guests lined up. I'm excited for this next part through December, January, February. I thank you all for listening and for supporting On the Way Home. Again, if you have ideas for guests, if you want to come on yourself, or if you know people, if you have suggestions around themes or panels, please reach out, michael.b@bluedoor.ca. Would love to hear from you and would love to keep bringing you quality guests and podcasts on the way home. Until then, I will see you next time on the way home.